Effects plugins are the sound designer's secret weapon that can help turn boring sounds into pretty sounds. So today I want to walk you through some of my favorite plugins for doing this. So let's start with an example that'll introduce us to a few of these plugins. With this pad, here's it with no processing. It's a decent sound, but definitely a little flat. You can already hear the plugins kicking in. Here's the affected version. So let me get rid of all the processing and I'll walk you through these one by one. First of all, Spaced Out by Baby Audio, and I should mention I do have a somewhat working relationship with Baby Audio. They've sent me free plugins for review, but they've never actually paid me to promote them. They never even asked me to directly promote them. I just keep bringing them up on both my channels because I actually really like their plugins and I think they're reasonably priced. And there are free, more limited versions of a bunch of them. Like Spaced Out, it has this little dice button to kind of randomize a bunch of parameters. And there's a free plugin called Magic Dice that basically is just this. And so if you just want to like spam it until you get something cool, that's an option. And I do want to mention that most of these don't do anything crazy unique and can be replicated with stock plugins or free plugins. Like Delay, D-E-E-L-A-Y, can do some of this stuff as well. I'll link a Venus Theory video that covers it at the end of this one. So once again, here's the dry sound. Let's add Spaced Out. So a few things going on here. I've got the delay section and the reverb section. I've got the Stardust parameter turned up a bit. Let me turn it up further. Add some kind of upper harmonics. It can get a little bit harsh, but it usually sounds pretty smooth and pleasant. And then I've got this delay with dimension turned on, so it's ultra wide. I am an absolute slut for ping pong delay. There's also an option to reverse the delay. I use that a lot. And we've got different parameters to play with here. Lo-fi's kind of fun. It's a little less smooth, but in the right context, it sounds really nice. And hazy, some more phasiness. And you can kind of control the balance. Here's more reverb. Let's send it into outer space. So this is a really nice sounding plugin in my opinion. And of course we got filters, very nice to have just directly into the plugin. I'm going to spam undo a few times to get us back to original settings. Okay. Next up, we have Super VHS, also by Baby Audio. You can immediately hear the main thing it's doing is widening it. And in fact, what I probably should have done is put this before the reverb. That sounds a little better to my ears. There's also a free stripped down version of this that just gives you this magic button, which basically what it is a stereo widener / chorus effect. So let me turn this off. So I'll often add this plugin to mono pad sounds to widen them out. I'm sure it creates some phasiness and phase issues, but most people who even bother listening to my music will probably be doing it on headphones, so that doesn't bother me. Mono. Stereo. And then I've turned up the heat a bit. See, that's a bit much. RIP your eardrums, I do apologize. And drift, which does like immediately cut a bunch of highs, but does add a nice wooziness to it. Delay and reverbify it. A bit of EQ to clean up the mud. And now let's bring in another plugin that I've been abusing the hell out of lately. And this one I just bought on a plugin boutique sale, I believe. This is Crystallizer by Soundtoys, and once again, you can do this with other plugins. For instance, the MPCs have a granulator plugin just built into them that does the exact same thing. Regardless, this is just the one I happened to get and made me pretty obsessed with this technique. On its head, it seems like a fairly standard delay, and it gives you a nice amount of control over like how big of a chunk of sound that it selects, and the speed of the delay, how much it feeds back into itself. That's basically what recycle is just feedback. It's got a ducker, built in, so you can not only control the balance between the sound and the delay, but also have the delay duck under the sound and then rise back up when the sound's not playing. That doesn't really apply here for this pad, but for percussive sounds or stabbier sounds, that can be really nice. And it's got a built-in pitch knob, so in this case I have it pitched up an octave, and it's got a reverser. And I believe this is modeled after some kind of classic hardware. Regardless, here's without, with all the other plugins, and here's with. I love this effect so much. Some people will say it just makes it more chaotic and it's not really helping me, but I don't know. I just really like the shimmer that it adds. And if you want to make it a little more subtle, you could maybe put it before, let's do before spaced out and bring down the dry mix a little bit. Turn down recycle a little bit. Just add a nice little subtle shimmer. Without. With. And then of course, if you want to take it way too far, and this is probably going to be harsh, so prepare your eardrums. Actually, it still sounds kind of nice. This can get really harsh though, so I would approach with caution. And once again, you can do this with other plugins. Like one thing I was a fan of doing before I discovered this was in fact, let's just do it. I would duplicate a track exactly, and then put a pitch plugin on it, put that at the very beginning of the chain, send that up an octave, and then once again, go into spaced out. So let me uncheck all the rest of this. I'll keep this EQ there though. Crank up the level of reverb and delay, especially the delay. Let's do the reverse. Let's do wonky tape. Now that's kind of harsh on its own. In fact, let's tame some of the harsher elements, cut some lows because we don't need them, and then turn it down a bit, blend it with this. Let me get rid of Crystallizer. So now, before, after. It's a little subtler, a little more restrained. And I'm sure we could take this a whole lot farther. Like I'm just going to spam the random button a few times. That doesn't sound great, but, you know, it is random. That's a little better. And once again, you can do this with free delays. Delay, the plugin that I mentioned earlier, has a setting where it does some kind of octave jumping modulation. That's also something worth looking into if you don't want to shell out for this. Up next, let me just get rid of all the stuff. I'm just going to keep using this sound to demonstrate this. Another Baby Audio plugin I've been vibing on lately is Crystalline. This is just a fairly clean sounding reverb. It's nothing like mind-blowing, but it's kind of become my go-to. Let's do spacey. One thing I do really like is that you can control the EQ of the sides of the signal. So I'm cutting a bunch of lows in this case, keeping it fairly clean. Control the width. Modulation. Shimmer. And this is like an algorithmic reverb, so I do imagine it'll start to gobble up some resources. So keep that in mind. Let me show you another thing I really like doing specifically with Crystalline though. So here I have a track I'm working on. It may or may not be out by the time you're seeing this. I stockpile content in advance, so I have no idea where this fits with the other stuff I'm trying to put out. Regardless, let me just play this and then I'll talk you through it.
In the neon city.
So that's either a sneak preview or a reminder to stream the song, depending on when this releases. Regardless, here's the first thing I wanted to show you with Crystalline specifically. I've gone in and automated the dry-wet slider in this exponential pattern here. And by the way, this is a track I made on my Akai Force, jammed it out live, recorded the individual tracks into Reaper, and I'm now working with it here. That reverb swell with that specific plugin is just really nice, and Crystalline is my go-to for reverb swells like that. You'll see people like use this technique all the freaking time. Although in this case, it made it quite a bit louder than it needed to be, and I wanted to keep the punch of the drop. And so I've also used a volume plugin to automate the volume down a little bit. Hopefully you get the idea. I should also show you the processing on the vocal. Like, first of all, it's just an amazing vocal by itself, but
Left my heart behind in
once
the
again,
neon city.
I've got fairly similar spaced out settings, and I think it goes really nice on this vocal, especially later on in this second drop kind of chorus section.
I left my heart behind in the neon city.
Wait for it.
And I left my heart behind in the neon.
Do you hear that way that delay like filled in that gap perfectly? Like, I didn't change any settings from the normal state of it. It's just
In the neon city.
it just perfectly accentuated that little moment, and I really like the way that turned out. I have other instances of spaced out on other tracks in this because, of course, I do. So, for instance, this piano, here's without. Here's with, and if I make it a little more intense, I kind of have my go-to sound that I achieve with this plugin, if you couldn't tell. Another example is this layer I added to the saw stack. So this is what it sounds like, no processing. Here's a bit of processing. But it's still basically just a dimension expander and a mild EQ. Then I duplicated this track and added this layer. So here's without the layer. Here's with. And here's the layer by itself. It sounds kind of bad, but when layered with the track, you can't tell that it sounds a little bit messed up. The reason for that is the trick I mentioned earlier is one I've used on this track. I've pitched it up an octave. So here's before. Here's after. That's why it sounds like dog shit. And then we add Crystalline, immediately bringing it into another realm. Some EQ, dimension expander once again, and once again, layered. I actually think it really works. So those are a few plugins and techniques that I really enjoy using. If you'd like to see me try out some plugins by YouTubers, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to see that Venus Theory video, you can click or tap up over here. I'll be back with a new video in a little bit. So in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Og.